another episode of Loaded Box Vids. This is episode 6, I believe. I can't believe how far into it we already are. It seems like just yesterday, Dylan, you and I were like just talking about this, potentially starting it. And here we are, 6 episodes in. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've really been enjoying it, man.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. And on that note, I'll say my candidate catchphrase. I'm just happy to be here and talk some football, man.
Or as last week, you said you were flabbergasted.
The same. It's still the same. Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of it, but so I'm guessing that means you're doing well. You're excited to talk about football today. So I skipped the old Dylan, how you doing thing, but Dylan at this point needs no introductions. Me, I don't need any introductions either. We're going to be here every week doing this. Hopefully you've been sticking with us. And if this is your first time watching, then welcome in. Hopefully you stick with us in the future. But today we're going to be going over our top Dynasty buy lows right now. And Dylan and I both picked 3 players that we want to highlight today. And Dylan, I'm going to let you get into yours first. So lead us off with your first buy low candidate for this offseason.
All right. So this one you might be surprised by. You wouldn't think he'd be on this list, but until you look at recent events, Mr. Melvin Gordon can't drive properly, apparently. And I'm saying that because he also didn't have an amazing season. Like, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. And he's getting older. Combine that with a DOI, combine that with the fact that he's missing at least 3 games, and the fact that who knows what Denver is going to do. For all we know, Gordon could be part of the package for Deshaun Watson. So my point is, I think it's a perfect buy low. If you're a running back needy team, just know that you're buying a player that might miss 3 to 6 games. As to what it might cost to get him, it depends upon the owner. I would say in most leagues, if you really, really need it, like an early second, maybe move like a prospect or something. I still have a hard time saying Gordon's worth a first-round pick. But then again, if you need a running back, who knows? I don't know how you feel about that, Mikey, but
I like it. I completely agree. At this point, I'm probably not giving up a first round pick for Melvin Gordon because chances are he's just a low end RB2, maybe even high end RB3 for you. He had a half decent 2020 on the ground. I'm looking at his stats right now. 215 attempts, was only 14 yards shy of 1,000, and he did find the end zone 9 times. But the big thing with Melvin Gordon that we come to really like about him over the last several years is his PPR upside, and that just wasn't there last year. Sure, he had his 32 catches, but he averaged less than 5 yards a catch. He only had 1 touchdown. Philip Lindsay is there, and he's definitely a big presence on third down for that Denver team. So God only knows what's going to happen with that. I guess we'll see what happens on whether or not they keep Melvin Gordon, keep Philip Lindsay, keep both of them. There's a lot of stuff to monitor going forward. But if you do need an RB2, if you are competing, I 1,000% would be fine with sending over a second round pick for him. He's turning 28 in April, and typically the age of decline for fantasy backs is 26 or 27. So not sure how much eliteness he has left in the tank, but he's worth a second round pick, I think.
Definitely a rental. That goes on to my next pick, which is more of a dynasty stash if the cards align, and that would be Sam Darnold. I think at this point, a Sam Darnold owner would probably be excited to trade him away for something, unless they're a Jets fan. And even that is mixed bag because Jets fans are mixed on Sam Darnold. So if you need a quarterback, you're looking at your roster. Let's say you have Tom Brady and like Drew Brees or something like that. One just retired and the other one's 40 bazillion years old. So you might want a good little stash for the future. Sam Darnold might be your guy. And I was talking to Mikey off camera. I'm not even sure what Sam Darnold's worth because I've seen him get traded in leagues for like nothing, and I've seen him get traded for leagues in like kind of something. So if you want Sam Darnold, just send the guy like a 4th round pick and he'll probably smash accept, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I think in 1 quarterback leagues, I think you could definitely get away with sending over a 4th round pick. And obviously with Sam Darnold, there's a lot of risk reward because chances are he's not going to be with the Jets this time in 6 or 7 months. Hopefully he lands on his feet and he goes starting somewhere, but he's good enough to where he should be starting somewhere within at least the next 2 to 3 seasons. So if anything, you buy him low and you kind of stash him away. He was the 2nd or 3rd overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. So there's obviously something there. You can't really fault the guy. He spent his entire career under Adam Gase on a really just abysmal team. So I like calling him as a buy low. And yeah,
So
I mean, if
it's a dart throw at the board. You're
it
hoping
is.
it
And you know
sticks.
what? If you're in a super flex league, I know that kind of adjusts his price a little bit, but even in super flex leagues, I kind of feel like you can get Darnold for like a early to mid third
He's still
round,
only
which
22 years old, 23 years old. He got in the NFL super young,
oh
super young.
yeah, there's still tons of time for this guy to develop. You can't write him off. Like I was saying, you know, and like you were saying, he's young and he's going to get another chance somewhere. You don't go from third overall pick to the Jets and then not get a chance anywhere else. So I
Sure.
like calling him as a buy low. A lot of people are trying to panic sell him right now because he is probably going to lose his starting job. And they're going to take whatever you can give them. So
Yeah,
give them minimal and just stash Darnold. I like it.
for gold. And speaking of young, my next final buy low for this video is Paris Campbell.
I like him.
I know you do. Mikey and I actually looked at the calculator, and he's worth more than I thought, which could go well or bad for you, depending upon what part of the video you are on, what side are you on. No, I think Paris Campbell is he's less of a shot in the dark and more of a sure thing in terms of buy lows, as it could be. Definitely, if you're a wide receiver needy team, I would pursue him. Although this one might be hard to pry away from owners. I feel like the only reason someone would sell them is if they're A, tanking, B, don't believe in him, or maybe C, are like stacked at the position, because the Colts really don't have much going in the receiving core. Because are they even re-signing T.Y. Hilton? No, right? He's
No,
testing.
I don't think they're going to re-sign
Yeah. So
Ty.
okay. So it's Paris Campbell,
Michael Pittman.
and Pascal, right? He's on the team.
I think he is. Yeah.
Okay, so it's really just Paris Campbell and
Yeah, and you got to think that Carson Wentz could probably do some damage with Paris Campbell. I mean,
That's what
Carson
I was
Wentz
going to
is
say. But the reason why I put this guy in my video, or our video, and you are his biggest fan as well, is that Carson Wentz, whether you don't like him, think he's trash, think he's dog water, whatever, garbage, overrated, he still, at this point, objectively, has a bigger arm and a bigger talent ceiling than Rivers had last season, because Rivers is old as dirt when he played there. So to me, that's still an upgrade at the quarterback position for Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman, which is why I would want either of those receivers going forward.
for sure. And one of the things that helps with Campbell's buy low status is that he spent all year last year injured. I mean, he played in week 1, tore it up. He had 6 catches for 71 yards in week 1. And then I'm pretty sure got injured on like his first play of the game in the second game. And he ended up sitting out for the rest of the year. There is a lot of stuff to like about him. As long as he had, a successful rehabilitation and he comes in ready to go for training camp and really gets the rapport down with Carson Wentz, I think Paris Campbell is going to be perfectly fine. Admittedly, I do like Michael Pittman a little bit more from a dynasty perspective. But at the same time, that's probably good for Paris Campbell because I don't think he's going to be treated as the de facto wide receiver 1, which means he might see some easier coverage on game day. I'm the Paris Campbell owner in the league that you and I are in. And before we hopped on this, you were like, yeah, I feel like you could probably buy him for like a mid third round pick. And I immediately was like, no, I don't think so, but I wouldn't ask for much more. I even told you I'm higher than a lot of people on Paris Campbell. And I even said, it's probably going to take me like the 208 or 209. We put it in the trade calculator before we got here and it said fair value for him would be 205. So me, someone who's high on Paris Campbell saying I would take the 208 or 209, you might be able to snag him away from someone who's kind of like middling on him for an early third round pick. And I think at that point, it's very, very doable.
How about yours?
So my 3 picks that I have here are definitely 3 mainstream guys, but
yeah,
you
went the more expensive route.
I did go the more expensive route, but you know what? They are still buy lows. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Jerry Jeudy, who is probably my favorite buy low candidate of this entire offseason. So this time last year, he was being touted as the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, depending on how you liked him and CeeDee Lamb for the 2020 wide receiver draft class. By the time the drafts got here, CeeDee Lamb passed him for the most part, but Jerry Jeudy was still a top 6, top 7 pick in virtually every single dynasty league out there. Drew Lock, he gets Drew Lock thrown to him, and Drew Lock was abysmal. On top of that, Jerry Jeudy and the Denver Broncos lost Courtland Sutton, who is a massive, massive presence out there that would take a lot of pressure off of the other receivers. So Denver wants to go out and potentially get a better quarterback or start building up their quarterback room to where they don't have to lean on Drew Lock. I think there's a decent chance they might have to roll with him one more year because they don't have the draft capital. And I don't think I know a lot of people are trying to speak it into existence, but I don't think they're actually members of the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. But nonetheless, I mean, if Jerry Jeudy gets a competent quarterback in the next 2 seasons, the sky is the limit with this guy. I mean, he is arguably a top 10 route runner in the NFL already, and he is just entering his sophomore season. I mean, I saw a highlight video on him earlier today when I was scrolling on Twitter, and this guy, I mean, when he runs routes, they are so pretty. Like
very crisp, very clean.
Exactly. There is not many receivers that can run routes like him. And I decided that he was going to be the first guy on my list when we first started putting this video together a couple of days ago. But I saw the most perfect thing today because on top of the highlight video that I saw someone on Twitter that said, hey, I think I overpaid for Jerry Jeudy, but I really wanted him. So I read into it. He traded away pick 111 and 211, and that's it. For Jerry Jeudy, the guy that people were spending 105 or 106 on last year, this guy just traded away 111 and 211. And 211 is essentially just a dart throw anyway by that time. I mean, you're probably not getting a legitimate guy at pick 23 overall anyway. So like, I mean, that's the definition of buying low on Jerry Jeudy. I would still confidently give up a middle first round pick to get Jerry Jeudy on my team. If you can get him for anything less than that, a late first and a late second, that is immediately, I'm going to pull the trigger on that every day.
I would get Jeudy from you right now if I knew that 112 and 212 got Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, it's like, and that's the thing. Like, it's just people that play Dynasty are so short-sighted. Like we've been spoiled over the last 2 or 3 years. We get these receivers that pop off for 11, 12, 1,300 yards in their rookie season. And historically, that just doesn't happen. Even with a lot of the studs out there, it just doesn't happen. You have to give these guys 2 to 3 years to develop, especially if they're in a shitty quarterback situation like Jerry Jeudy is. So I know I've been talking about him for a little bit, so I'm going to move on here, but I am very passionate on Jerry Jeudy being my favorite buy low this offseason. Next guy I'm going to talk about is David Montgomery, running back for the Chicago Bears.
You think he's a buy low?
He is a buy low. And it's kind of interesting to say, considering he just finished top 5. But if you look at consensus rankings, he's still outside of the top 15, honestly, even closer to the top 20 for a lot of people out there. And David Montgomery broke out in the second half of the season, and people kind of credit that to an incredibly easy running schedule, which, don't get me wrong, that schedule was a cakewalk. I probably could have run for 400 or 500 yards over the course of 8 weeks in that.
No, you couldn't have.
No, I couldn't have. But David Montgomery sure as hell did. He smashed it over that 7 or 8 week span, and he won a lot of people their fantasy championships because he was the definition of a league winner. Someone that really kicked it into overdrive in the second half of the season, crushed it in the playoffs, whatever. But there's a lot of questions around him right now. What's the Bears going to do at the quarterback position? How are they going to improve their team? How is David Montgomery going to fare moving forward when he doesn't have 8 games in a row of cakewalk? These are the things that people get so caught up in, and they're shying away from David Montgomery. I mean, admittedly, I don't have him, in my top 10 dynasty running backs right now, but I'd consider him a top 15 guy. And if you really need a running back on your team and you're ready to compete, I genuinely think you could trade away like a low end first round pick for David Montgomery. And I would consider that as a buy low, especially for a guy that was the number 2 or number 3 overall selection in rookie drafts just 2 years ago.
I agree. I think you talked about it. To just go briefly on it, you said he was a league winner, and the fact that the Bears do not have much going, losing Allen Robinson, having quarterback troubles, one of the only sure things on that roster is Montgomery.
Oh, for sure. And God only knows what they're going to do here or there. But his perceived value is so much lower than it actually should be for a guy that just finished as a top 5 running back. So
I agree.
So, I mean, if you can steal him away for that low end first round pick, or even honestly, a similar deal to that Jerry Jeudy thing that I was saying, a low end first, a low end second, I honestly think that's so worth it. And if you plug either of those into a trade calculator, I guarantee you the David Montgomery or the Jerry Jeudy side is heavily outweighing the picks right now. And then I have one more for you here today. I'm going to go back to the receivers. He was my favorite buy low target last year, and I couldn't get him anywhere. So I'm going to try again this year. and that's Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals. So this guy, he never, ever gets enough credit. And before Joe Burrow got hurt, Tyler Boyd was actually on pace to finish the season as a top 20 fantasy receiver in PPR leagues. I mean, he was showing a great rapport with Joe Burrow, especially with T. Higgins kind of breaking out. It opened up the field a bit more for Tyler Boyd. They complement each other really well, and they're going to continue to complement each other really well for the next several years because Cincinnati is not going to let either one of these guys go. With that being said, Tyler Boyd hype over the last 2 or 3 seasons, it always comes around as soon as the NFL draft is over and people start focusing on vets again. By the time June or July gets here, I guarantee everyone's going to be like, all right, guys, we have to go out and we have to buy Tyler Boyd. No, I'm telling you to buy Tyler Boyd now before that crowd gets here, because I mean, with Tyler Boyd, people just forget how good he is. Look at his first half of the season. Look at his second half of the season. I mean, he was honestly pretty good even with Joe Burrow out. But when Joe Burrow comes back in, Tyler Boyd, in my opinion, is a surefire, at least back-end wide receiver too for fantasy purposes.
I'm glad you put him on your list because Tyler Boyd's great. I'm one of the few people that you said I defend him year round. I love him. I think him and T. Higgins are going to be one of the best little wide receiver tandems going forward with youth on their side. And I think if you can get him for low, because he's still kind of probably worth something, I would 112% smash it. Like, I would love to get him in our league right now, but I know Lucas is not going to trade him. So
no, definitely not. Definitely not. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to gauge it. Like, I just plugged it into the calculator here. It says a completely fair trade for Tyler Boyd would be pick 105, right? But I would not pay 105 for Tyler Boyd. And I don't think anyone would realistically expect to get 105 for Tyler Boyd. I think this is a scenario, I've kind of gone in descending order. Jerry Jeudy has the most value, then David Montgomery. Tyler Boyd is under David Montgomery. But I would consider a similar, I don't mean to keep bringing up the 111, 211 thing, but that's the kind of trade where, if you want this stud consistent guy in these 2 receivers, or you need that filler with David Montgomery, like a back end first and a back end second, or even an early second and a back end second, whatever combination you have, I think you really could swing it and try to get him off, especially if like T. Higgins is getting all the hype in Cincinnati right now. Like, go after Tyler Boyd. Always go after the guy that's not getting the most hype on the team, because more often than not, he's just forgotten about.
It's true. It's a good point. It's a great point, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, your guys, you will definitely be able to get Sam Darnold and Paris Campbell and Melvin Gordon for cheaper than the 3 guys that I put on my list. But I actually really like how we did this. I like that we included, those lower end guys that have the upside, as well as the guys that are already seeing their upside, but they're just not being valued where they should be. So I think we had a really nice, healthy mix in here.
Yeah.
And I know this is a much shorter video than you guys are used to seeing from us, but I think moving forward, we are typically going to try to keep it within this range. I mean, obviously, when we get really excited about something or doing a mock draft or whatever, we'll go on and on for 45 minutes to an hour. But we just wanted to bring a brief one for you guys here today, highlighting 6 of our favorite Dynasty buy lows. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We are going to be back next week. And for once, we actually have next week planned out already. So I can tell you what's coming up, and it's actually going to be Dynasty sell highs. So we're going to be telling you about those guys that you should be selling ahead of your rookie drafts, and even just ahead of the 2021 season in general, to capitalize on that value. So thanks again for tuning in, guys, today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Follow Dylan, follow me, follow Loaded Box on Twitter, and feel free to head over to our website, loadedboxpodcast.com, to view all of our articles, rankings, player profiles, and of course, the links to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in, guys.